Hello and welcome back to Chatbot on Robot Republic with me, Josh or Riku. Today we have a very special guest because I am joined by Max, who is developing a really awesome indie game called Wink. Hello, Max.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. Tired as always, but hey, what's new there? So Wink is a really, really cool game. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about it? Because it's a really, really cool game, and I think people will be really excited to kind of learn a bit more about it.
Cool. Yeah, it's a Game Boy Color game. It actually does work on the Game Boy Color, but you can also play it on your computer. It's a platformer. You play as a creature named Wink, who is an eyeball with a body who can shoot lasers and lives in a very cute post-apocalyptic world.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
lot to explore and a lot of secrets and stuff too.
I mean, that came through when I was playing it in prep for the interview. It was post-apocalyptic, but in a very different kind of style to what we're used to. It wasn't kind of like sad and depressing. It was quite light-hearted and upbeat. There was a dark undertone that I noticed, but it was generally quite kind of upbeat and stuff. So I'm kind of wondering, where did the inspiration for Wink come from?
Well, the character for Wink came from me. I do a lot of doodling and drawing, and when I was in high school, I just randomly drew this picture of Wink sleeping in a bed and called it Eyes Dreaming. And I kept drawing the character, and I had other characters at the time too, but that one stuck with me. And eventually, I wanted to explore a weirder type of world than I had been, and I thought he was a really good character for that. So I started drawing like some comics and cartoons with the character, and that's when I started to figure out the kind of world that Wink lived in, and I realized it would make a good game. So I did that. Um, I had been looking for a character who was kind of iconic and simple like that, but not anything that I had seen before. So that's why I think I really liked that character. And the idea for the world kind of just organically grew over time. There were a lot of different places I put that character in, and the kind of like landfill world is what really felt right,
Hmm.
and I wanted to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so obviously thinking about kind of like, really fascinating world and stuff, and we'll dive a bit deeper into the lore and stuff in a minute. But in terms of the game, was the intention always to kind of like create a Game Boy Color game, kind of like with that kind of like level of kind of nostalgia and stuff linked to that? Or is that an idea that kind of developed over time during that kind of creation process? Did you think, oh, I can make a Game Boy game from this? Or was it kind of like, I want to make a game that's very much like Game Boy Color games?
Well, when I started this game, I had been doing these small one weekend slow low game jams using different game dev tools online. And I used Bitsy, well, actually Mosey, which is a lot like Bitsy, but you can use music and more color. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bitsy, but it makes very simple games that mostly are walking around and talking to different characters and stuff. And I made a game called Oh, I'm a Cat Now, I guess. And
Brilliant.
um, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a good kind of project to do. I had been working a long time on a more 16-bit style Wink game, which is on my itch.io page. And this Wink was actually going to be a demake for that originally, that I was just going to make in a weekend using Game Boy Studio 2's beta
Yeah.
when I found that had been released. But uh, I just got really into it and things started taking longer, and I decided that I was going to make uh, a sequel to the other Wink game, which is for Mac and PC, which I made in Game Maker. I still want to finish that one, but ironically, this is a sequel to that game, but it's going to come out first. But that's
which is
fine.
pretty cool.
I guess that one will be a prequel. But I got really into Game Boy Studio and really enjoyed the community. And I really like Game Boy Color games and 8-bit games, so it was really cool to make a game for actual hardware, which I had never been able to do before.
Oh, that's really awesome. And I mean, I grew up with a Game Boy Color. I remember, well, I had an original Game Boy because it was that many, I'm that old. But yeah, I think it's really awesome that actually creating a game for a kind of what was for a lot of people kind of like some of their first games consoles, which is really awesome. So kind of with that in mind, then the 16-bit style and stuff, was that always the intention to kind of have that more pixel art-esque aesthetic, or was it to kind of explore other avenues and then landing on the pixel art? Kind of which way around did it come?
Well, I would really like to explore many different kinds of art styles. I would really like to make a game in the Wink series with hand-drawn art. And I've always really liked pixel art. I'm pretty obsessed with it, so it was very natural, and that's where I started making games. I've always really liked uh, retro platform games and Zelda games and stuff like that. So it was very, very natural for me to make a pixel art game. And originally, with the Wink for Mac and PC, I was actually kind of thinking of doing more of an 8-bit look, but it ended up being more 16-bit. So using the Game Boy kind of, helped me uh, realize that goal. Um, but yeah, I guess I think that the tool itself maybe made more of the decision for me on how it looked. But I also am very obsessed with 8-bit art. I follow a lot of artists on Twitter and Instagram and stuff because good 8-bit pixel art uh, just looks so good to me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, pixel art is, I've always found it to be genuinely gorgeous, be it 16 or 8-bit pixel art stuff. It's always been so cool, and I'm always in awe of people that can create that level of art. Because I've tried it and it always ends up looking really, really bad. Kind of in terms then, because obviously there is so much in Wink. It is a full blown game in itself. There is loads of stuff in it, from assets to music and sound, kind of movement mechanics, loads of amazing characters. There are some really cool characters and stuff in there. How did you handle kind of creating all of this stuff? Did you kind of was it kind of like, I know what I'm going to do, so I just need to kind of like create stuff around it? Or was it kind of like a bit more kind of like, you've already mentioned that Wink, you were kind of like, you used to doodle it, you've been doodling Wink for ages. Was it more that you already had kind of some of these characters already from doodles and stuff, or was it thinking, right, I'm going to make a game with Wink, I now need to start thinking about other kind of characters and enemies and environment art and all these things? Kind of how did you tackle this? Because it's from my perspective, it's a huge undertaking because there's so much in it.
Well, a little bit of both. I draw a lot, and that gives me a lot of different ideas. And sometimes I specifically decide to draw like Wink stuff, or sometimes I just draw other things, but those things that I draw can show up in this world. But I didn't really have I rarely do have a very clear idea of the plot or anything like that. I think that over the course of really solidified that what works best for me is to kind of like discover the world as I'm working on it and see what fits in different places. But I did have some characters already, and some I had a lot of the world already designed because I used a lot of the ideas from the uh, PC and Mac game I was working on. So like Wink's house was largely already created. But I was also a little bit flexible with that, and so some things are a little bit different. And I think, I think about that and I'm curious, I think about, I like the idea of a world that feels real. So, but I also like the idea of like in Mario how things are different for each game. So I think I'm going to be exploring what to do with that, like those two different options. And a lot of new enemies and environments came up in this game because the tool itself, Game Boy Studio, and the Game Boy hardware too, has limitations that meant I couldn't do certain things. So I had to create some new enemies, and I liked uh, creating new environments that I could use the hardware. Um, like my previous game has a lot of similar areas, but some of those areas won't really be explored in this game, but some of them will. Like, there's going to be a shop where you can rent a boat in both games. And the factory is a big plot point in the previous game, and it shows up in this game. And the way it shows up in this game is directly related to what happens in the previous game. So things like that. But in this game, you're going to explore a larger world because the Mac and PC version of Wink is more focused specifically on the small local area around where Wink lives, which is called the outskirts. And then this game, you can explore more, like you can explore distant mountains and stuff like that.
That's amazing. And yeah, that's really, really cool. And there is
So
so much
there's
in it.
that. And then also a lot of characters came up either outside of Wink and were brought in. Characters are new. Um, I'm actually working right now on filling in the map more, so there are going to be a lot more characters, which I think is going to be really fun. Uh, but for now, I kind of uh, just create random characters. I really enjoy the Link's Awakening game, and I like how strange the characters are in that game. I think that has been a really big inspiration to me and a big influence. But yeah, not a lot of characters have returned from the previous Wink game yet, because I've kind of developed my understanding of the world a little bit, and so some of them I don't quite know where they fit into this more developed version of the world. So I'm gonna see about that. But one of the characters that did uh, make its way back into this game is the owner of Bye Bye Bye. In that game, there were a lot of different owners that would change every single time you went into the building, but this one has one specific owner, and I'm interested to explore that character more. What were some characters that stood out to you?
Um, to me, I've so far, I'm still in the first kind of map area. I love Wink. I think Wink is brilliant. Bye Bye Bye, I thought was probably one of the most fascinating ones, but I liked the little crawl space area in Wink's house right at the start with the two little friendly NPCs that are kind of staying in Wink's house. I was like, oh, this is fun. They're just hiding in like a little crawl space. It's like, yes, love it. And the dog. Oh, the dog that gives you pizza. Love the dog.
Okay, so you're playing the 16-bit version of the game. I actually thought you were playing the Game Boy game. So you have more experience with the uh, previous world, which is cool. So that's more of a 16-bit game, yeah.
It's really, really cool as well, actually. And that brings me on to my next question, because obviously there are a huge raft of different enemies and ally NPCs and stuff, and that must have been a task and a half to do all of the dialogue, all of the programming and stuff linked to that, and the triggers tied to the kind of the different dialogue cues and stuff. So, kind of, how did you handle that? Because that is a lot of programming.
I just took it one step at a time. And also, if one enemy does something and another enemy does the same thing, but maybe something else, and I can use the previously created code. But that was a lot of work, and it did take a lot of time. Sometimes enemy behavior is the most time consuming thing because sometimes it just takes a while to figure out how to get it to work right. And also like time the frames and the sprites and stuff with the animations and actions. But Game Maker is what I made that game in, and it is pretty awesome. Like, it's event driven, so you can, event driven means like something happens and then it executes code. Like, you run into the enemy, and then that's when you put some code in and then figure out how to handle that situation. The NPCs were probably one of the easier things to create, and the way I kind of create things is create more of a framework for what happens and then use that as a guide to fill it in with newer things. For example, Puppers, the dog character, at first didn't give you the pizza, but then I thought it would be good to show you how to get extra lives is by getting pizza. So I also thought it would be good to, or extra health, I mean. I also thought it would be good to make make the player need to talk to an NPC so they knew how, because I haven't seen too many games where NPCs are scattered around in platforming levels, so I thought it would be pretty important to communicate how to do that. So that's one of the reasons why I made that room that way. And then I just would get ideas for where to put characters, and later on that character might have more of a clear purpose that they could be edited to use. So that's kind of how it works. It just kind of fills in the blanks as I work on it more.
That's really, really awesome. And kind of thinking about all these NPCs that you've got, because there are a load in there, and each of them have got their own personalities and their own little quirks and stuff. Kind of, when you were developing Wink, which point in the kind of process did you think each of these characters needs to have their own dialogue to communicate their personality to the players? Was that kind of like an early decision that these NPCs have got identities and characteristics and personalities of their own, and I need this to be kind of given to the players, need to be aware of them? Or was that kind of later on down the line when you were kind of adding additional things?
That is a pretty standard thing in my games. I'm not sure where that came up when I was making games, but it's been there for quite a while. I have a lot of older games that I made um, when I was learning how to make games, and they have like that's very ingrained in my games in general. It's something that uh, I'd say maybe one of the things that's most consistent about my games actually, and it was definitely inspired by Link's Awakening, and just like games where you talk to NPCs. And I'm really into platformers, and I've always wanted to make good platform games, and I don't feel like I've ever made the games I wanted to make. So I have kind of like continued to work on that, and then brought some things that I liked from other game styles too. Like I would like to make a top-down game sometime, but I want to finish these games first before I do that. But having those little interactions with characters is really fun to me, and the people who played those games enjoyed it, so I just kept doing it.
Oh, that's really cool. And I think you've said something that's really important there, actually, that people do enjoy that in games, And actually it was I found it refreshing. I remember playing, the old 8-bit and 16-bit Mario games on the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color as a kid, and I was thinking how nice it would be. And like you say, Link's Awakening had really excellent and made excellent use of characterization and stuff. And it was really kind of reminiscent of that for me when I was playing this, actually, is that you've got these NPCs who you can talk to, and they've all got their own personalities and stuff. And it was I got a very kind of like, old school Zelda-y game vibe from the kind of like characters and stuff, but also this really kind of like nice individuality in each of the characters seemed individual, and that's really awesome, I think. So yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. And so the next question then, kind of what have been some of the kind of biggest challenges in the development of Wing? Because obviously it's such a big game and there's so much stuff in there. Kind of what have been some of those challenges and how have you overcome them?
Well, one of the biggest challenges has been programming. I basically taught myself to program, so I never took a class on it or anything. I used a lot of like code examples and stuff, especially starting up. But for the Mac and PC Wink game, I used an engine for the basic like physics and stuff like that. And then I had to, add the enemies. And I'd say maybe on top of that, the biggest challenge is the time commitment. Like how to make a game which is like a full-time job, and then also support, living and paying for bills and stuff. So that's been one thing that I've been wanting to figure out, how to make money from my games so that I can make them more um, consistently. And so that is a bigger overarching challenge. Um, I'm trying to think if there were other challenges. Well, actually, yeah, one of the big challenges was uh, moving from an older version of Game Maker to a new one, because I had an outdated version for a long time, but that version couldn't make games for modern systems. So I've been in the middle of that, and actually, as I was coming closer to wrapping that transition up, I started this Game Boy Wink project. So I haven't quite gotten that finished, but once I finish this Wink for Game Boy game, I'm planning on releasing another Wink for Game Boy game, because a new version of Game Boy Studio came out with a lot more features that I think will be really exciting to use, like a next generation version of Wink. And after that, I think I'll probably go back to the 16-bit version and uh, finish that up, because Game Maker can make games for consoles and stuff. I'd really love to put it on all of the consoles, and that's one of the reasons why it was so important to transition to the newer version of Game Maker. but there were a lot of differences in code, and that has been a real challenge to fix all of those different things. I had to take it one bug at a time, like fix one bug, and then there would be another one. Most of the bugs were game breaking in the transition, which is kind of good because then I know it's there. So fixing that was also hard.
I bet. I bet. Oh, but I'm really, really glad that the project worked actually, because the version of Wink that is available on your itch page is it's just bloody good fun actually, and I genuinely love it. It's really awesome. Um, so I suppose last question then is kind of what is next, both in terms of, I mean, you've mentioned kind of going back and doing a prequel of Wink, but kind of what's next in store for kind of like Wink as a kind of franchise, if you will, and other future projects that you're possibly planning on working on and stuff.
Okay, yeah. So the Game Boy version of Wink, which is called Wink and the Broken Robot, is going to have a digital and physical Game Boy cartridge release this year. And that is up on my itch.io right now as a beta, which you could play. It's the sequel to the PC version, which I believe is the one you're more familiar with. And so, yeah, that's worth checking out. Um, that's the most immediate thing that's happening with Wink, and it'll work on real Game Boys, Game Boy Color, and Analog Pocket. But it will also be playable on computers, and my goal is to get that on consoles. But it's not going to be easy because I don't really know how to do that. I have to figure that out. Um, and then before that release, actually, a different game of mine called Ruby and Rusty Save the Crows is getting a physical release. I'm finishing the artwork and instruction booklet for that one, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's a very cute game. It's about anthropomorphic tomato and beet who are like little kids, and they live on a farm. So the whole game takes place on a farm, and the scarecrow on the farm got turned into an evil witch because the farmers put a costume on it for Halloween. So now they're taking their job too far, and the crows all ran away. And Ruby and Rusty are friends with the crows, so they have to go and save the crows. So that's going to be a real game on Game Boy Color, and also like a physical copy that you can buy and play on a Game Boy Color. Play it on your computer. Right now, you can play it on your computer in your web browser or an emulator. So that's pretty much my plan for games this year. I make music, so I'm releasing an EP soon. I'm finishing up my last era, which was my EP Power Lines. I'm going to release an acoustic version of that. And then I'm going to move on to my next era, which I'm really excited about because it's more developed and original, I think, more forward looking, and I think that I've gotten better at singing and stuff too. So that's really exciting. And yeah, I'm definitely really excited about the franchise of Wink. There are so many plans I have that I'm really excited about making games. One plan that I would really like to explore and I'm really into is telling the story of Wink through the history of game consoles. So, like, there's going to be an NES version that takes place before the 16-bit version, and I would also like to go back to arcades, so that will take place chronologically before the NES version. And I'd also eventually like to explore 3D games, like chronologically when those come into the place or into reality. But there are also other worlds I'd like to explore too that are kind of coming up and bubbling up, and I'm excited to do that, but I'm not ready to move on from Wink's world yet. So I'm focused on the Wink world right now.
That sounds so exciting, honestly, Max. And I can't wait to play more games in Wink's World. To be fair, it is absolutely amazing, and I'm really excited about the Witch Scarecrow game. That sounds amazing. That's like my kind of thing, kind of like Halloweeny, spooky, but not spooky, if that makes sense, kind of vibe. That sounds really awesome. Um, and yeah, we'll have to get you back on the show to talk about some of these future projects as well because they sound absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to come back on and talk about that. That would be really fun. Definitely got a lot of stuff that I'm working on.
Well, we can't wait to see all of these amazing new projects that you're working on, Max, honestly. And yeah, definitely come back on the show and talk to us more about them because they look so cool. Last little thing then, before we wrap up, Max, where can the lovely viewers who are watching this find you and find out more about the Wink games that you have currently got up?
You can find me. Let me just make sure I'm giving you the right link. You can find me at maxoakland.itch.io. That's where you can play my games. maxoakland.itch.io. I have several different games on there. So there are some more like short arcade type games that you can play. I've made a lot of different projects for different game jams and stuff, but I have some longer ones too. So I'd love it if people would check that out and comment. And then also, I make music too. So you can find all of my stuff at maxoakland.com. You can go to maxoakland.com and look at links to my games, music, all that stuff. So that would probably be the best place to go.
Max, that is brilliant. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And to people watching, if you've checked out any of Max's amazing games that he's got up on his itch page, let us know in the comments down below which one was your favorite. And also let us know what your favorite characters in Wink were as well. Um, that would be amazing to know. Thank you everyone for watching this lovely video of us on Chatbot. Max, thank you very much for coming on. It's been lovely having you. And yeah, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and click on the link down in the description that takes you to to Max's itch page where you can play the Wink game that we've been discussing. Have a lovely time. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Big love, and we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.